Ah! You recognize the voice, bitch!
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Don't Shoot the Messenger. Today's episode is going to be a little bit different. We are just going to be discussing NFL right now with the playoffs about to begin. As always, I'm here with JR Swish and our good friend Loso as well. Sauce is not with us, but hopefully he will be soon. So let's get started, fellas. The first topic for today. NFL All-Pros were named today. I have the list right here. First team All-Pro. Tom Brady, Todd Gurley, Le'Veon Bell, Rob Gronkowski, Antonio Brown, who was the only unanimous decision, by the way, DeAndre Hopkins, Andrew Whitworth, Lane Johnson, Andrew Norwell, David DeCastro, Jason Kelsey. That's offense. On defense, we have Calais Campbell, Cameron Jordan, Aaron Donald, Cameron Hayward, Chandler Jones, Luke Kuechly, Bobby Wagner, Jalen Ramsey, Xavier Rhodes, Kevin Kevin Byard, Harrison Smith, and Darius Slay. On special teams, we have Greg Zuerlein, Johnny Hecker, Pharaoh Cooper, Jamal Agnew, and Buda Baker. That was all the first team. Second team, we're not going to worry about it right now. But what do you guys think about the first team All-Pros this year? JR, I'll let you start. Any snubs, you think?
Snubs, you might have had not really. Now that I'm thinking about it, I think they got quarterback, running back, receivers right. Hopkins had a better season than your Julio's and your AJ Green. Tight end, Travis Kelsey could have got it over Gronk, but maybe not.
Well, Kelsey did make the second team.
Made second team, yeah. Offensive line looks fine. Edge rushers looks. Cameron Jordan, I mean, he only had. Well, he's an edge rusher, but they had who led the league in sacks? Marcus Lawrence? No, Chandler Jones did.
No, Chandler Jones did, and then DeMarcus was right there with him.
Second team, I believe. Corners looks fine. Those would be the two I'd probably pick for this season. Kevin Byard, first team All-Pro. That's pretty impressive. Harrison Smith sounds about right. Darius Slay. And then the entire Rams special teams. Yeah, sounds about right. Not from first team. I wouldn't make any change. No.
Yeah, I feel like it wasn't a popularity contest, which I really enjoyed. I feel like the names that got it really deserved it.
I agree, and that's a problem we run into a lot when we discuss NFL honors, the Pro Bowl especially nowadays. I mean, the Pro Bowl title has, at this point, lost any and all meaning. You can't really use that as an argument as to whether or not an NFL player is better than another NFL player. The following players made both the first team and the second team. Le'Veon Bell, he made the first team as a flex and the second team as a running back. Calais Campbell made the first team as an edge rusher and the second team as an interior lineman. Xavier Rhodes made the first team as a cornerback and the second team as a defensive back. Now, that seems kind of redundant.
Same thing, yeah.
And then Pharaoh Cooper made the first team as a kick returner and the second team as a punt returner. But, I agree. I like all these choices. I think the only ones that I would switch out, I'd probably put Casey Hayward as a cornerback on the first team. I know the Chargers didn't make the playoffs, but Casey Hayward had probably the second best year by a corner next to Jalen Ramsey. I know Ramsey, gets all the talk. Xavier Rhodes, his team made the playoffs, but Casey Hayward, really not a guy a lot of people talked about this year, but he was absolutely incredible. I think honestly, I would take DeMarcus Lawrence first team over Cameron Jordan as an edge rusher. Those are really the only.
I wouldn't.
Yeah, that's a snub. I'd agree there.
These are the only, changes I'd make. Other than that, it all looks good. Carson Wentz was second team quarterback. If he had never gotten injured, I would have had him first, honestly. And to me, he would have won MVP.
I think Saffold possibly could have been. Roger Saffold on the Rams could have possibly been an All-Pro first team.
Over Andrew Norwell.
Is that the left guard?
Left guard for first team was Andrew Norwell, left guard for the Carolina Panthers. One of only 5 guards in the NFL to not allow a single sack all year. And just for noting it, Trey Turner, the Panthers' right guard, was also one of those 5 guards to not allow a sack all year. But, I definitely think Andrew Whitworth was the, no-brainer choice for first team All-Pro at left tackle.
Not that he single-handedly did it, but he really helped change the entire culture over in LA.
In LA,
yeah.
Absolutely.
I'm happy Saffold at least got second team All Pro. I think he had probably one of the more memorable plays of a lineman all season against the Eagles, where he took down the first level and then he zoomed all the way up to the second level and just completely took somebody out, really clearing the lanes. Like I said, I think he did really great. He didn't make it to the Pro Bowl, which I thought was a snub, but I'm happy he got second team All Pro. I think he could have gotten first. I don't know enough about Norwell to say he deserved it over him. But if anything, I think it's probably close.
As our resident Panthers fans, I can say in all sincerity that Andrew Norwell is the best player on that line. And then their right tackle, Darrell Williams, the Panthers, he made the second team All Pro, which I was shocked that he made the second team All Pro, but other than that, I was shocked at how amazing of a year he had. A lot of talk in Carolina was when they drafted Taylor Moton in the second round, expected him to compete for that starting right tackle spot, and they pretty much handed it to Darrell Williams. I think a lot of fans were very confused, but after seeing the way Williams played this year, it was a no-brainer. I think the first game or so, he kind of started off a little bit rough, but he's established himself as one of the best right tackles in the NFL this year. And then, talking about offensive lineman David DeCastro out of Pittsburgh, that entire Pittsburgh line really absolutely incredible. I'd say, dare I say, the most underrated line in the NFL. We talk about great offensive lines. We talk about the Dallas Cowboys. That's always a big name. The Raiders, right. But, I mean, pretty much everybody on that Steelers offensive line is a stud.
Except for, filling away the left tackle. He's a little questionable.
Correct.
Wow.
But I would say, other than that, and you could say the same thing for a lot of lines in the NFL. Carolina, for example, both, like I mentioned, Turner and Norwell, Darrell Williams. Ryan Khalil, when he's healthy, is pretty underrated. I'd say the weakest part of that line is obviously the left tackle, Matt Khalil. As for the Rams, Loso, as our Rams fan, who's the weakest link on that line?
Honestly, I feel like the line had such an impressive year. I'd say maybe Jamon Brown due to a lack of experience, nothing else. Not that he had a bad season.
Right.
But because John Sullivan did a really good job at center. He really brought over some experience, some leadership, along with Whitworth. Whitworth gets a bulk of the credit, but John Sullivan, to me, was one of the best centers in the entire NFL. I haven't seen. He did a good job. He's growing. He's been a good pick. He's actually done solid for us the entire season. And then Saffold, like I said, I was just looking into his stats a bit. So this year he had 1 sack and 1 false start, which was his only penalty, and no holding calls.
Yeah,
so dominant season.
Absolutely. And in a league where we constantly talk, when we discuss offensive line, we always talk about the left tackle. I think that having those anchors at the guard position, really an underrated aspect of an offense's rhythm. All around, there's a lot of great guards in the NFL that people don't talk about. So I just think that's a pretty underrated position in today's NFL. Anybody have anything else to add regarding the All-Pro selections this year before we move on to our next topic?
I think it's interesting how you can make the second team on a different position than the first. It's weird. Like the whole defensive back thing, it sounds like a really broad position to make the All-Pro.
I agree. I've honestly never, and you know, it's probably happened in the past, and I've completely just looked over it, but I've never seen that before, ever, where somebody made the first and second team.
And I think the flex position is like a new thing or something like that. I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but JR, anything else to add before we move on?
No, not any All-Pros.
But can we just notice that three Los Angeles Rams were for special teams All-Pro.
Yeah,
Just got to show how great of a special teams.
I was about to say, without a doubt, the Rams have far and away the best special teams unit in the NFL.
It's incredible the season they put together, and a lot of credit goes to the special teams coordinator, of course. John Fassel's done a great job. He's been there for a long time. Absolutely. When Sean McVay came in, he's the only one that he didn't get rid of when he cleared house. Right. And that's for a reason, yeah.
Well, we're going to move on, and one of the biggest stories that came out today, or ESPN was trying to push this story, written by Seth Wickersham, senior writer at ESPN, put out a huge piece on apparently a giant rift in New England between Robert Kraft, the owner, Bill Belichick, and Tom Brady. You know, I've read through the story, but just looking at this, so many quote-unquote unnamed sources, and you know, this is a huge problem in journalism nowadays, not just with sports, but journalism in general, using quote-unquote unnamed sources, whatever. I hate that, and there's no way to back them up. So this entire story is pretty much predicated on unnamed sources from what I can gather. And I don't believe it for a second. This is a trio that has led this team to 5 Super Bowls in the span of less than 20 years. This has been the most successful franchise by far of the 21st century. I mean, you look at them as the model of consistency, not just in the NFL, but in sports in general. We talk about Tom Brady being the greatest of all time. We talk about Bill Belichick being one of the greatest coaches of all time. And, you know, we don't talk too much about owners, but Robert Kraft, incredible owner, looking at what he's done. So what do you guys think? Les, I'm going to let you start here. This giant, I don't want to call it a fluff piece, really, but, I mean, is there any credibility?
So I think ESPN's gotten to the point, and I mean this in the most respectful way possible, that it's just simply pathetic. Mm-hmm. Nobody watches, nobody cares for ESPN anymore. Mm-hmm. Everybody realizes how annoying it's gotten, how garbage it really is. So they're just pulling whatever they can together to try and get people to tune in, to read their articles. You have buffoons like Stephen A. Smith spewing out garbage just to get views. Mm-hmm. So I think there's probably some truth behind it. I'm sure all of them think that they're the ones that is responsible for everything. Mm-hmm. But I'm sure it's not that big of a deal. The only one I can see taking it somewhat personally would be Bill Belichick. And even then, I don't really see it. I don't think it's an issue. I think the credit obviously should go to the owner of the team. You're the one putting all this together, one way or another. Even if it's Belichick assembling the team, it's Kraft that brought Belichick to the Patriots. You know what I'm saying?
Right. And you know, personally, I think all three deserve pretty much an equal amount of credit. I mean, like you said, Kraft put the team together. Belichick helped stack it. But I mean, all three of these guys, legendary at their respective positions, and whether it be a stroke of luck or whatever, that all three ended up together.
Well, did you hear what Colin Cowherd was saying?
I tend to stay away from.
I'm not a big fan either.
Yeah,
but he was saying that Brady was pushing to get rid of Jimmy G, and Belichick was pushing to get rid of Tom Brady to prove that he can win it with a different quarterback.
I did hear that. Now that I think about it, it scrolled across my Twitter feed. Before we get into this whole, because I have a lot to say about ESPN and Colin Cowherd. JR, initial thoughts on this gigantic piece of garbage that ESPN put out.
It's a hoax.
any credibility whatsoever to it.
No, none. They don't show. They haven't shown any signs of slowing down their said dynasty. So, no, unless you see proof or actual evidence of them, or have any credible sources, then no. 'Cause all they do is just win, and they haven't.
Yeah, and like I mentioned, this whole story is predicated essentially on unnamed sources. Again, Seth Wickersham, the guy who put this whole thing together. But I just want to.
His name just sounds like a scammer.
If this was an article written on
it's just the name itself. He sounds like a used car salesman.
It does.
Wickersham Motors. I mean, whatever. Auto. Anyway, I have a lot to say about Colin Cowherd and ESPN. I agree entirely, Loso, that ESPN has gotten to the point where it's simply pathetic. People know them for what they are. You have laid off hundreds and hundreds of employees over the past few months. You've kept the screaming head Stephen A. Smith. You stick with the personalities over the talent, and you wonder why your ratings continue to plummet. And then you think that pushing an entirely inaccurate story is going to somehow save you, at least a little bit. I'm sorry, and I have no respect towards ESPN. I know you said with all due respect, Loso. I have no respect for ESPN or anybody there. Colin Cowherd, I have no respect for him either. Colin Cowherd is one of the biggest frauds I've ever seen in sports media. He flip-flops on every single issue. He constantly calls out superior athletes. Yeah. We have a good friend on Twitter at JCam1010 who his takes are almost as bad as Colin Cowherd.
Give him a follow.
Give him a follow and let him know how much of an idiot he is. The difference being that Jake is, unlike Cowherd, is not a egomaniac. But Cowherd, just thinks he can say and do no wrong. Anything he says comes true. This whole story of Brady wants Garoppolo gone, Belichick wants Brady gone, blah, blah, blah. I don't believe any of this for a second. I just think it's a stupid, pathetic attempt at, just trying to get clicks. That's all it is. Just trying to get your ratings up. ESPN, keep in mind, were the ones who were really, really pushing Deflategate. ESPN has always seemed to be on New England's case, and I can't stand the Patriots. I can't stand them. I have a lot of respect for them, but I can't stand them. But to me, from the outside looking in, it just seems like they constantly nitpick at New England, like they're just trying to get some sort of reaction from Belichick, from Brady, from anybody within that organization, and they're above it, and everybody knows it.
They're the two extremes too. It's either everybody in the company is completely against it, or they got guys like Teddy Bruschi and Damian Woody, who I think would take a knife to the chest for Bill Belichick and the Patriots. And you can't listen to either of them. It's all garbage. None of them have an unbiased opinion. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I agree completely, and that's another thing about media in general. Not just sports media, not just sports journalists, but there's no unbiased, unprejudiced anything.
Yeah,
it's just ridiculous. So, we all just wanted to clear the air on that in terms of what we believe. I think all three of us are in agreement. It's pretty garbage, right?
Yep.
100%.
Yeah. So, our next topic, Loso brought this up when we were discussing ideas for this episode. The revolution of running backs in the NFL. And Loso, you have a really good point, and this is something that I've thought for a couple years now. Running backs are really making a comeback in the NFL. We talk all the time we talk all the time about this being a pass-happy league. About how you need that quarterback, and those receivers, and you kind of stray away from the run game. Like, yeah, it helps, but the passing game is really what's going to carry your offense. And I mean, and I really saw it coming when Todd Gurley and Melvin Gordon were drafted in the first round a couple years ago. I was like, the NFL is going to change here soon. And now you look at all these running backs declaring for the draft. Obviously, Saquon Barkley, the biggest name. You've got Nick Chubb and Sony Michel out of Georgia.
Geis, all right.
Yeah.
What's that? Yeah, Geis is another big name.
Geis is supposed to be better than Fournette, from what I've heard.
Right, and then, yeah, exactly. All these running backs drafted this past draft: Leonard Fournette, Alvin Kamara, Christian McCaffrey, Kareem Hunt. Exactly, 4 running backs in that draft.
Of probably many more that we're not even mentioning.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, JR, I'm going to let you start here. Do you see this revolution of running backs continuing for some time, and eventually the NFL becoming what it once was, which was a run-first league?
Probably not all the way to where it becomes run first again. No, because this is just not the way. They've altered the rules to where it's so much more favors offense to more of a passing league. But the running back trend will continue for sure, for the most part, because and all these running backs are all in their first 3 years, so it's going to continue for the longest time. And the majority of them are workhorses anyway. They can run, they can block, they can catch out of the backfield, they can run routes like receivers. Super athletic. They have, you look at your Gurleys and your Bells this year alone, they have had more receptions than your Des Bryants did. It's pretty insane. And they're getting paid like top receivers as well, because they're not getting just top running back money. They're getting number 2 receiver money as well. So they're getting well into double-digit ranges for running backs. So, yeah, it'll continue once Bell sets the market, if he gets tagged again or he gets extended, he'll be looking at like 14 a season for a running back, which is unheard of.
And that could pretty much set the market for quite a few years for running backs. I liked the point you made that running backs do so much more nowadays in terms of catching passes out of the backfield. If you're the Panthers, what you tried to do with Christian McCaffrey was put him in the slot as well on the outside, receiving, blocking downfield. They do a lot more, like you said, nowadays. And I feel like to be successful in an offense, your running back has got to be that kind of versatile player. What do you think, Loso? I know you're the one who proposed this topic to us. Do you see this revolution continuing?
I do. The first thing I find impressive is I feel like I originally thought a workhorse back has this workhorse back body type, body build, an everlasting able to keep running the ball.
Right.
I feel like that's not the case anymore. You have guys like Alvin Kamara, who's a skinny little guy who you can play almost every single down, and he gets touched so little that he's not getting hit, he's not getting banged up, and it's just amazing. And like all these halfbacks, they're learning how to run patiently, something that like Bell always gets pointed out for his patience. Right. You can see it in a lot of these halfbacks where they're all able to wait. They wait for the block. They follow the block. They find the hole. Which is something I feel wasn't taught to halfbacks back in the day when you had some of these great halfbacks playing. We're about them just being the tougher guy, slamming through the hole, running through a guy, not around the guy. Exactly. Yeah. So I feel like the revolution of these halfbacks, it can definitely continue. And while a lot of the credit's obviously on the halfback, I feel like a lot of it also has to fall into these new head coaches and how great they can scheme them and how well they can work with them. Like Sean McVay, for example, from last year, Jeff Fisher not using Todd Gurley at all, to him being probably the best receiving back this year. It goes to show how much a coach really puts into it. Or even with the Saints, a team that was probably 95% pass, 5% run for like the last 20 years. Drew Brees is plan B now. Plan A is Alvin Kamara and Mark Ingram and using them and getting the ball somewhere.
Exactly. And then
And that's why Drew Brees has like a 73% completion percentage this year.
Yeah, set the NFL record for in a single season for completion percentage. 72% of his passes completed.
He's low-key turning Alex Smith. Kind of crazy.
Yeah, that's what you can do when you have Kamara and Ingram, who are the first halfbacks on the same team to have over 1,500 scrimmage yards.
Yeah, and
it's ridiculous.
Loso, I love the point you made about the Saints. Essentially, Drew Brees becoming Plan B. I mean, for the longest time, we've thought, okay, Drew Brees has got to be done soon. And every year, he kept going and kept going. And, the Saints were kind of stuck in the middle of the road. They got this running game going. They got their defense going. And now, if they keep this up, Brees could easily play another 3 seasons.
It helps him.
Yeah, when it's not
longevity.
I think that's one thing that too many people, there's not a lot of people talking about, is having these run games open up. The pass game also extends your quarterback's career.
Yeah.
You're taking less hits. You're using your arm a lot less.
The guy he's up there in age, and Le'Veon Bell has definitely helped this guy stay in the league. I think that's a big part of the Patriots offense. Using so many different running backs. The main guy right now, Deion Lewis, but throughout the course of Brady's career, he's had so many different halfbacks be able to do so many different things. And I think that's one of the reasons for Brady's long career that doesn't really get talked about. But personally, guys, I think that this revolution is going to continue.
I don't think it'll take over the passing game, though. I don't think it'll ever surpass the passing game.
And JR made a good point, saying that the league rules are set to favor, passing offenses now.
Yeah, it's easier to get a pass interference call than to run the ball that far.
Yeah.
Right. And one of the biggest things I saw preseason was the Panthers talking about an evolution of the offense, adding Christian McCaffrey. And now, obviously, it didn't work out because McCaffrey had less than 500 rushing yards this year. Not to say that McCaffrey is a bust by any stretch. I just don't think that their offensive coordinator, Mike Shula, utilized him to his proper talents. And the other thing is this. We talked about guys being small and shifty. McCaffrey is small and shifty, but the Panthers just aren't able to get him out in that kind of open space that they want. Relatively quickly, not a lot of yards after contact. But going back to my original point, evolution of an offense. I think that's a thing that we're going to start seeing a lot more of as we continue this revolution of running backs. We're going to see an entirely new kind of NFL here in a few years, I think, with all these running backs coming in, like Saquon Barkley, as I mentioned, who can do so many different things. And we're going to see quarterbacks' careers extended.
If I could just go back to the Saints real quick, one of the most interesting clauses I think I've seen in the contract belonged to Mark Ingram, who, if he made the All-Pro team this year, he would have been a free agent. Yeah. And I don't know if you consider him a snub from any of the All-Pro teams, but you can see, we talked about it, he didn't make an All-Pro team. And I'm sure Drew Brees is really happy about that. But these clauses for Mark Ingram really haven't been working for him. A couple years ago with the touchdowns, where they didn't want to let him run the ball and get the touchdown so he wouldn't get the money.
Yeah, there was one for yards as well, and they kept him out.
Yeah.
But
he made some bad clause agreements.
Yeah. I wouldn't say Ingram is an all-pro snub, and I'm not saying that to discredit anything he's done. Having Kamara back there with him has definitely improved him as a player.
Yeah.
I think it just speaks more to the volume of how good running backs are. Exactly. So kind of transitioning away from running backs, guys, we're going to start talking about receivers. Another topic Loso brought up. A lot of receivers in the NFL, star guys, kind of had very underwhelming years. Julio Jones, A.J. Green. If you consider Dez Bryant a star, first of all, I don't know what's wrong with you, but obviously Dez Bryant had yet another bad year. JR, what do you think? I mean... But meanwhile, you
As my man Jalen Ramsey
had. I'm sorry, Jared.
AJ Green, soft.
But meanwhile, you had
soft.
you had guys like DeAndre Hopkins, who we knew how talented he was. He had an off year. I mean, he had Brock Osweiler throwing him the ball, and this year, I mean, he had Tom Savage and TJ Yates throwing him the ball, but he had a completely dominant year. I mean, if it weren't for Antonio Brown, DeAndre Hopkins would have been the best receiver in the NFL this year. Do you disagree with that, Loso?
I think he was the best wide receiver in the NFL this year.
You think he was better than AB?
I think he was better than AB. Yeah. I mean, the guy played with Tom Savage, TJ Yates, Heineke, whatever the guy.
This guy Heineke was.
He had Deshaun Watson for a nice stretch as well, though.
Yeah, he had for 4 games, I think. 4 games.
I don't know. He threw 19 touchdowns. I know that.
Yeah, I know.
I want to say 6 games.
6?
Close to it. I think maybe 7. But regardless of the fact that, you know, Watson and Hopkins is going to be a very fun duo to watch in the NFL in the future. But
Hopkins could have played with a goddamn wooden stick and a Texans jersey on. He would have had like 5 touchdowns and 300 yards that game.
My argument to you, Loso, is this. Last season with Brock Osweiler, just an outlier, just a measure of how terrible of a quarterback Brock Osweiler is?
Yes. Yes. Yeah, no. Yeah, Brock Osweiler is... Brock Osweiler couldn't cut it with the Browns. When he got traded to the Browns, what did the Browns promote? The 2nd-round pick that they got in that draft. When you get traded along with a 2nd-round pick for a 6th-round pick, you suck. You're garbage. You're the worst quarterback to play.
And now I do think that a bit of that was just moving that contract, but yeah, I agree. I mean, he's trash.
He's garbage. Worst quarterback to play.
But going back to our original point, talking about these star receivers who had pretty down years, is it a sign of things to come for these guys specifically, or just an outlier? Go ahead, Loso.
I think it can go hand in hand with our last topic, maybe, with the resurgence of the running back.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with. I can see that. I mean, you look at Atlanta. Julio had kind of an underwhelming year, but you look at all the weapons Matt Ryan has on offense. You got one of the best running back duos, Devontae Freeman and Tevin Coleman. You've got Mohamed Sanu, Taylor Gabriel's pretty solid, Justin Hardy, kind of reliable. Austin Hooper at tight end.
And he doesn't utilize any of them. My goodness.
But then you've got AJ Green, who, let's be honest, that offense depends on him.
I mean, request a trade.
Well, they have good halfbacks back there.
They're not bad. You know,
Croft had a good season for Eifert.
Tyler Croft did, and Eifert is definitely a pretty good tight end. But again, I think that offense,
I believe,
it's supposed to be more focused around AJ Green, but he had a pretty off year. We're not even going to talk about Dez Bryant. This guy is trash.
Trash. The ball.
Dez Bryant, as JR likes to call him.
Back.
But you had guys like I mentioned, DeAndre Hopkins, and another guy who really broke out this year, Adam Thielen.
Cool.
Adam Thielen.
The next Jordy Nelson, and yes, it's because of his wife.
Adam Thielen, Devontae Adams in Green Bay.
How about
a pretty?
So
Keenan Allen season.
Oh, Keenan Allen,
the Slayer.
Keenan Allen had quite the comeback year.
So these star wide receivers that had off years, a lot of them, their quarterbacks also had off years. So is it on them or is it on their quarterback? Matt Ryan, I honestly think had an awful season. I don't think he did that well.
Matt Ryan had an off year. Andy Dalton's terrible.
Yeah, exactly. Jarvis Landry had Jay Cutler throwing them the ball.
Yeah. Jarvis Landry, another big name wide receiver that had kind of an off year.
Dak Prescott looked like he never played football in his life for about 7 weeks in a row.
One of the worst sophomore slumps I've ever seen.
Pretty rough sophomore slump for Dak. Yeah.
And then you look at guys like Keenan Allen, Phillip Rivers. He would have some really bad games. But all in all, I think he had a pretty solid season. He was able to stay there.
Absolutely. Be able to come back from those injuries and then do what he did. Now, I have seen a few stats that push at Keenan Allen's drop rate. But, I mean, he's
volume.
I mean, I'd take him 11 times out of 10 if you offered him to me. I'd be like, give me Keenan Allen. Come on.
Yeah,
guy's one of the top receivers.
Then you got Case Keenum, had another great year over there, helping Thielen out.
Yeah, and that kind of is going to lead us into our next point, Loso. Kind of a new wave of quarterbacks in the NFL. Carson Wentz, Jared Goff, the two biggest names. Case Keenum really had a breakout year this year. Who else? and then Jimmy Garoppolo, obviously. Jimmy G. Deshaun Watson before that unfortunate injury. Is there a changing of guard about to happen at quarterback? I mean, we talked about guys up there in age: Tom Brady, Ben Roethlisberger, Phillip Rivers. Aaron Rodgers is not getting any younger. He's 33, 34 now.
All them guys.
Drew Brees. So, JR, I'll let you start here. You think there's a changing of the guard very, very soon here at quarterback as to who we consider the top guys in the league? Before you say anything, I just want to say this. It feels like we've been saying changing of the guard at quarterback for years now, and we still see guys like Brady and Brees at the top.
Slowly but surely changing. I mean, you got your Phillip Rivers and your Eli Manning's not putting up great numbers, because I can't say Eli's ever put up historically great numbers, but they were once guys that were once considered top quarterbacks have kind of taken slight steps back. You know, Drew Brees isn't the first option on the Saints offense anymore. Phillip Rivers is still kind of Phillip Rivers, but never that. He's not that elite offense he once had. Who else? Eli Manning, pretty much falling off a cliff here. Big Ben took a step back beginning of the season, got his legs back as the season progressed. What else? Tom Brady didn't finish the season the strongest. But yeah, the changing for new quarterbacks. Yeah, you have your Andrew Luck coming back from injury for next season.
Whoa!
Your Deshaun Watson coming back from injury next season.
Woo!
Then you got Carson Wentz coming back from injury next season. Those are your next three young guys you would expect to take the next step.
Well, I wouldn't say Luck is young. Luck is
He's young. He's still mid-20s. Yeah, he's young.
He doesn't have a shoulder. He has the shoulder of an 80-year-old.
It feels like, in terms of Andrew Luck, I have to disagree with you. I'm not trying to discredit his talent at all. But I can't put any trust in Luck solely because that organization has absolutely butchered one of the brightest young talents we could have seen.
Well, yeah.
I know he's relatively young.
Yeah.
I know he's relatively young, but I just don't personally think he's going to have the careers that Carson Wentz and Jared Goff are going to have. I think these two guys are going to be two of the most successful quarterbacks as they continue coming up.
They've overtaken Stafford and Matt Ryan's in terms of success, because Matt Ryan and Stafford have been in the league for almost 10 years now, and they still have yet to take that next step, which is kind of disappointing because I like Matt Ryan, but I don't know. I guess he hit his ceiling. Well, I can't say last season because he had like a fluke of a season last year, mainly thanks to his offensive coordinator. But I always liked him. They just never took that. They were really good, but they were never great. I don't know. It happens, I guess.
And Loso, kind of, you obviously are biased towards one Jared Goff. But this new wave of quarterbacks we've been talking about. Do you think do you agree with us? This new wave.
Yeah, y'all go watch that. Y'all go watch that. Y'all tell me who got in who did.
Well, I don't know. I think we're in a really awkward position right now, where these new young quarterbacks are ready to take over, become the new face, and all that. And I feel like these old guys are just not ready to give it up, and they don't want to give it up, and they're doing everything they can not to give it up. Drew Brees still setting records. Tom Brady still has the best record in the NFL. Ben Roethlisberger still has a first-round bye, one of the most explosive offenses. He could still throw for 500 yards.
Mm-hmm.
Phillip Rivers still putting together a good season. So, yeah, like, they're just not ready, and with, again, going back to resurgence of the running back, I feel like it's making it easier for them to prolong their success, to keep them on the top of the game.
Right.
And it's easier for them to stay at the top of the game as long as they do somewhat better than the average than it is for a young quarterback to come through, take over, and push them out the way pretty much. Mm-hmm. I think the two faces of the NFL quarterback wise, going into the future, maybe 2 years or 3 years down the line, it's going to be AFC, Deshaun Watson, and NFC, Carson Wentz. They're the two most explosive, fun, entertaining quarterbacks to watch. They're really reminiscent of a young Russell Wilson, and Russell Wilson's still young himself.
Yeah.
And while we're on the subject of Russell Wilson, him and two other younger quarterbacks I want to mention. Russell Wilson, Derek Carr, and Cam Newton. Guys that are still relatively young, but with guys like Wentz and Goff coming up,
are they taking their shine?
Yeah, with Carr having a down year, with Wilson's Seahawks missing the playoffs for the first time in years, Cam Newton is a very up and down player. I don't know. Do you guys think that guys like Wentz, Goff, and Watson just kind of completely overtake them? Have they already overtaken them?
Not Wilson. Not Wilson.
Yet. They can.
Wilson won't get overtaken. That's the only one out of the three that I see. It's just impossible to overtake Russell Wilson. Mm-hmm. The guy is 99% of that offense. He has 5 garbage cans on the offensive line, and he'll still find a way to stay in the pocket for more than 20 seconds.
That's because he runs around like busted play. He does it on his bite.
And it works.
Yeah.
And we enjoy it, and it's on SportsCenter's top 10 every goddamn morning.
Pretty much.
And it's always when they're down by 5 or 6 or 4 with 3 minutes left in the fourth quarter or 2 minutes left in the fourth quarter to win a game.
Spin around a few times and throw a prayer and
unless you can do that every week, you're not overtaking Russell Wilson. You just can't. Cam Newton probably, because the media really doesn't like him, and I'm not sure why. Mm-hmm. And then Derek Carr, he just doesn't deserve that contract, and I have no problem with him being overshadowed by this new young talent. What the hell are the Raiders doing? What are they doing?
I think two guys that didn't necessarily deserve those big contracts, Derek Carr being one of them, Matt Stafford being the other. But in regards to Cam Newton, going back to what you said about Russell Wilson, a guy that has to make plays happen because he's 99% of that offense, I think you can make a similar case for Cam Newton. And it feels like we've said this about these guys throughout their career, how they aren't given much of a supporting cast on their offense, and they do what they can with it, and they get their teams places. Obviously, both quarterbacks have had incredible defenses to help them out. Big names on the other side of the ball. Bobby Wagner in Seattle. Well, all those guys in Seattle, really. Carolina, Luke Kuechly. Julius Peppers now being back and still dominating the way he has.
TD.
Thomas Davis. Josh Norman when he was there. K'Wan Short in the middle of the line on defense. But I don't think that you can. I don't think you can say that about Russell Wilson and not say it about Cam Newton. Now,
well, you know what separates them, right?
The ring, of course, and in that Super Bowl season for Seattle, nobody was stopping them. They're one of the most dominant teams I've ever seen. I mean, just because their defense was so incredible. Now, as far as the Panthers go, and Cam Newton, obviously 2015, the 15-1 year MVP, got to the Super Bowl, didn't win it, obviously. But while we're on the subject of it, have we seen the best of Cam Newton, or?
I think so.
You think so?
Yeah, and it's not like a knock on the guy. I just think your body type, it doesn't, especially when you run it as much as a guy like Cam does. And I know every season we're not going to run Cam as much. We're not going to run, and then you look at the stats, and the most yards on a design run play by a quarterback is Cam Newton. It adds up at some point. So I think 2 years ago he was at his peak physique, peak age. His roster was garbage on the offensive side of the ball, but he was so good that 15-1 for the Super Bowl. And even if he can be as good, I don't think he'll have a chance to prove it because his roster is automatically better than what it was at that time.
Yeah, and this is just a bias in me talking, but I think Cam Newton's always going to be on the short end of the stick in terms of measuring how he is as a talent, how he carries a team. I think people look at 2015 as the outlier in regards to Cam's career, very up and down. What do you think, JR? Have we seen the best from Cam Newton? Are we past his prime?
No, he's not past his prime. He's in his prime, but we've seen his best season probably ever that he's played. Yeah, in 2015. Simply because
it's a remarkable season.
Yeah, no, he won league MVP. He was the face of the NFL that season for that entire season.
Yeah, 45 touchdowns total, only 10 interceptions.
He had everybody dabbing. It was wonderful.
He had everybody dabbing. That's right. While we're on the subject of quarterbacks, guys, let's talk about one who's about to, not this week, but next week, make I believe his first playoff start. Nick Foles. Obviously, having to take over the reins there in Philadelphia with Carson Wentz being out. For a while, the Eagles looked like, without a doubt, the best team in the NFL. Wentz looked like an MVP candidate, and it didn't look like anyone could stop the Eagles. And then, obviously, the injury happened. So I guess my question is this. Can Foles lead the Eagles to the Super Bowl? Can he get it done? Can he be a game manager and allow that defense to, carry the load and him just not lose the game for them? So I'll let you start.
Foles couldn't hit water if he fell off a boat. Foles is garbage. Foles is not good. Foles is 27-2 season. It's bull crap. It'll never happen again. He played a quarter against the Giants week 17, and he looked like absolute garbage.
Against the Cowboys, I believe it was.
Against the Cowboys, he looked like absolute garbage. He's not ready to play on a playoff team. He shouldn't even be on a playoff team. Mm-hmm. And the only reason he's getting this opportunity is because Sudfeld is the only other option, No, they're one and done. It doesn't matter who they play. They're one and done, yeah.
Jared, what do you think? Same? Do you agree with Loso here?
He's not leading them to no Super Bowl. Not at all. They may win. Who do they play first? Who would they play first? It depends.
If the Rams win, it's either the
Saints or the Rams.
Saints or the Panthers. It's either Saints, Panthers. No, it's either either the Panthers, the Saints, or the Falcons.
Okay, yeah, they're losing.
They can't play the Rams.
They're losing. Yeah, you're right. They're losing.
Oh, so you had them beating the Rams, is what?
No, I'd have them lose. I thought they had to play
the Saints,
but they're losing regardless if they play, I would think. Yeah, out of those three, they'd probably lose the first game. Or it'd be super close, but yeah. They may win one and then lose the next one, but they're not making it.
Oh, yeah, they'll definitely not beat the Vikings.
No, hell.
I agree with you, Loso. I don't think that they make it out of the second round, and that's not a slight on Philadelphia as a talent. As a talented team, I mean. I think that they have an amazing defense, a lot of weapons on offense. I just don't think anything of Nick Foles. I get he had the 27 touchdowns, 2 interceptions season, which feels like it was 10,000 years ago.
Might as well have been.
but I just don't trust Nick Foles at all, and I don't trust him to not lose a game for Philadelphia, regardless of whether they're playing the Falcons, the Saints, or the Panthers. Now, personally, I think,
silly nannies.
What's that?
Or the London silly nannies.
Yeah, or the London silly nannies. I don't think Nick Foles is going to lead that team to victory. If they do win, it's going to be on the strength of that defense. And then the question becomes, is that defense strong enough to win them a playoff game? And I think the answer is no, because right now it looks like they're probably going to play the Saints. And I don't think there's any chance that they beat the Saints. Not at all.
Well, the thing is, the NFC, it's such an offensive-oriented playoff right now. Like, if you look at every team in the NFC, I think it's primarily dominated by their offense.
I think the Rams, Falcons, and Saints, yes. But as far as the Eagles, Vikings, and Panthers go, those are teams that, for the most part, have relied on the strength of their defense to keep them in games this year.
I wouldn't say. Well, no. For one, I don't think the Eagles had to be kept in games at all. They were steamrolling through everybody. Carson Wentz was the best quarterback all season. I think their offense did an amazing job. I was the second highest scoring offense in the league. I mean, you can make the defense is obviously important. You can make the argument which was more important, but I wouldn't say the defense carried them. As far as the Vikings, Thielen had a great year. Stephon Diggs had a great year. Dalvin Cook was having a great year. McKinnon had a good year. Murray had a good year.
Kyle Rudolph,
and then Case Keenum. They were another team. They were winning not by a little. They were dominating these teams they played. So yeah, for them, their defense is more dominating. So that's one of the two teams I'd say that was mostly driven by their defense. Yeah. And then the Panthers.
Yeah. With the Panthers, it really just depended on which Cam Newton they got that week, honestly. Their defense kept them in games. But if Cam Newton wasn't carrying that offense, Carolina wasn't winning that week. I mean, take a look at 5 losses. 2 to the Saints, 1 to the Bears, which was pretty weird. 1 to the Eagles, which now in that game, kind of both on the defense and on the Cam, I think. But the Eagles were a great team. And then to the Falcons last week, which the defense did their part. I know that it was a score of, I think, 22 to 10, but the defense held Atlanta to 5 field goals on short fields while Cam continuously overthrew his receivers, turned the ball over. So that offense certainly goes as Cam goes, and I just don't think it's strong enough to do much of anything in the playoffs. But while we're talking about playoff teams, the Minnesota Vikings have the chance to become the first team ever to play the Super Bowl in their stadium. They're hosting the Super Bowl in Minneapolis this year. It's a great stadium. But what do you guys think? Do you think the Vikings become the first team to play the Super Bowl at home?
They got the best chance to do it. I mean, if there was a year, this might be the year it happens. Wouldn't be shocked.
Unfortunately.
Been going. Case Keenum led Vikings somehow. Leads the Vikings to the Super Bowl. And they're playing at home. My goodness. In the middle of February, beginning of February, and snow, probably 3 feet of snow outside Minnesota.
Well, it's
probably against New England or Pittsburgh.
It's a closed stadium, though.
Yeah, no, it's a dome. But I'm saying, just in general, the entire atmosphere of the Super Bowl being in 3 feet of snow.
Right. Yeah, and I'd probably say it's a Patriots-Vikings Super Bowl right now.
This is how prematurely are these Super Bowl tickets sold? Because let's say the Patriots get in it. Do you think it's going to be a lot of Patriots fan in that stadium?
I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there has to be a certain amount, maybe.
I think it's going to be just half and half, honestly.
Right, so it won't really feel like a home field advantage, would it?
No, but it is making history if the Vikings do it. I mean, to be able to win,
celebrities and shit like that too.
Which by the way would be the Vikings' first Super Bowl in franchise history. Can you imagine them doing it at home.
Pandemonium.
Yeah, that'd be incredible. I think they're going to do it. Not necessarily win the Super Bowl, but I think they're going to rep the NFC in the Super Bowl. They've been my pick since the playoffs started.
Well, you know,
not the playoffs started, but since Wentz got hurt.
They've been Jake Cam's pick since like week 2 for the
last year, yeah.
Oh yeah, for the amount of shit we talk on him. He picked just to refresh you guys' memory. He picked the Vikings about, I think it was after week 1 or week 2, where he said it looked like a Super Bowl caliber team. And I think all 3 of us got on Twitter and trolled him.
And this was when Sam Bradford was starting for them, by the way.
And all 3 of us got online and trolled him. Oh
yeah,
no remorse.
And you know what I have to say to that? A blind squirrel finds a nut eventually. A broken clock is right twice a day.
Credit, Dalvin Cook was the halfback at the time. Sam Bradford was the quarterback at the time. So it's a different team.
Right. But we knew how dominant that defense was.
But Glenn is the head coach there, so he should know.
Loso thinks that I look like Mike Zimmer somehow.
And that wins.
So,
biological father is Mike Zimmer, yeah. Head coach of the Minnesota Vikings.
So speaking of head coaches, how about this, guys? John Gruden, the new coach of the Oakland Raiders, 10-year, $100 million deal to coach the Raiders, about to move to Las Vegas, no longer in the booth on Monday Night Football.
That's my Gruden grinder right there for grinding all of that money out of the Oakland Raiders. Freaking idiots.
Yeah, I'm not really sure what Oakland is thinking. Number 1, hiring John Gruden, but number 2, 10 years, $100 million. What were they thinking? Honestly. JR, I'm going to let you start here. What in the world are the Raiders thinking?
I could tell you. I don't know. I really have no idea. I mean, they got to get I guess they got to get a known name to move to Vegas, but like they were saying earlier, they were given, how much money? Like a couple $100 million for the new stadium.
Mm-hmm.
So they decided to throw $100 towards the coach who hasn't coached in about over a decade.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, not the brightest of ideas, but desperate times called for desperate measures. Sounds like the Raiders take a step forward last year, and then after this shitty season, and then look like the old Raiders and give John Gruden $100 million. My God.
So if
One step forward, 2 step backwards. My God.
If you divide this $100 million into the 10 years, that's $10 million a year, right?
Yeah.
That's more than Harrison Smith. No, it is what Harrison Smith's making. Well, Malcolm Jenkins makes. With more than Travis Kelce, Thomas Davis, Greg Olsen.
All coaches' contracts are guaranteed too.
Keenan Allen, Cam Chancellor.
It's nuts.
This is more. It's
incredible.
It's $100 million too much. It's a stupid decision by the Raiders to bring in a guy.
More than LeSean McCoy.
This guy hasn't coached in over a decade.
He probably won't make it past the 3rd season.
Jesus.
Yeah, I agree. I just feel like as much as Gruden's been in the booth for Monday Night Football, he is not going to be ready for the pace of a current NFL game. I mean, we've talked about
Michael Benny
of NFL offenses, and I feel like this is a guy who's
making more than Jameis.
Yeah, but I feel like this is a guy who is stuck in his ways, and that's going to be his undoing. That's going to be his downfall. I love listening to him on Monday Night Football. He's the most entertaining part of it most of the time because the games are garbage. He was the best part of ESPN for a long time. But I just think he's going to fizzle out as a head coach. I mean, it's a big name, yeah, but and he's bringing in these coordinators. Not my Greg Olsen, but Greg Olsen with an O instead of Olsen with an E.
The Rams quarterback coach.
Yeah.
Yeah, bringing him in to be offensive coordinator. I mean, this guy doesn't exactly have a great track record. I mean, he's pretty terrible.
He was never a great coach. So That's
Yeah,
the mind-boggling part.
So, I don't know. Just overall, looks like the Raiders are back to being the Raiders that we knew throughout the mid-2000s.
Jermaine Kearse makes half the money of what this guy's going to make. Half. Devontae Freeman makes half the money of what John Gruden's going to make on an annual basis.
Stafford is the highest player guaranteed.
Julian Edelman's not even half.
John Gruden gets $100 million. Stafford got
And
92.
like you said, JR, all that money is guaranteed.
Yeah.
So,
Especially head coach's contract.
He's probably going to make more than Derek Carr's going to make, since Derek Carr's contract isn't fully guaranteed, is it?
Yeah, Derek Carr only got $70 million. So.
Great news today, guys. Ryan Shazier has feelings back in his legs after yesterday's news. But great news from yesterday. You know, Ryan Shazier has feeling back in his legs after that horrifying injury a couple weeks ago. This is a guy that all three of us, and I'm sure everybody really who watches football or who follows football at all, has been really rooting for. You know, we wish him the best of luck, and we're super happy for him. I know JR, he's our Steelers fan. He's probably the happiest out of everybody in terms of fans who we want to see Shazier not necessarily back on that football field, but we want to see him be able to just run again. You know, that's one of the most horrifying injuries I've ever had to witness live. And, you know, initially it doesn't look bad, but the second he turns over and lays on his back, it's just, I mean, it's scary. We always talk about head injuries in the NFL, and here we've got a bright young talent who injures his spine, is in danger of never walking again. Not to bring the mood down or anything here, but we're certainly happy for Ryan Shazier, and this isn't
prayers up.
But what's that?
User God back. We need the user God.
Prayers up. Prayers up.
Yeah. Prayers up for Shazier, as it has been and will continue to be. We love you, Ryan Shazier, and once you're back out there dominating on the football field, you can come to Carolina and beyond. Come
Future Panther.
Yeah, Future Panther. Does anybody have any specific shout-outs they want to make before we end this episode, or anything for I'll drink to that?
Oh, you know what I'm drinking to?
What are you drinking to, Loso?
The playoff games tomorrow. Not a little.
But a lot.
A lot of
I'll drink to that.
A lot.
I'll drink to that.
What, you're smearing off ice?
Yeah, no Mike's Hard tonight.
No, yeah. That's too hardcore for you. And all those damn wine coolers is probably why you don't have a neck.
Loso made the discovery before the show that I apparently don't have a neck, folks.
Necklace.
Yeah. Yeah, real funny. So I think that is it for this episode of Don't Shoot the Messenger.
Yep.
Thank you guys so much for tuning in and listening to us ramble on for well over an hour.
Just to let you know, we made the switch from Discord to Skype, if it sounds clear.
Yeah, the first couple of episodes of our podcast, we recorded it on Discord. And let's be honest, it was pretty trash. We're on Skype now, and hopefully that'll help us sound clearer.
If anybody has a webcam for this on the sale for the Lolo, just let me know, because my computer's camera's garbage.
Yeah, Loso needs help, folks. Start a GoFundMe for a Loso camera. But again, thank you guys for tuning in. We certainly appreciate it. For Loso, for JR Swish, this is Glenn signing off. We will see you guys. we will see you guys on the next episode of Don't Shoot the Messenger. Again, thank you so much for tuning in, and we will see you later.